Hey guys, welcome to the week 4 chat about using the 3D space within After Effects. Hopefully this kind of helps cement some of the things that we learned in week 4. If you were gone in week 4, this will be a quick rundown of everything we talked about. Um, I don't have a lot of the project files that I used in class right now because I'm on a different laptop, but hopefully we can recreate them and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm going to do a new composition. Some of you in class are not selecting this HDTV 1080 29.97 preset. Some of you are in these weird wonky ones. These HDTV presets are really nice. So the 29, 25, 24, those are the frame rates. So if you're in broadcast or whatever, I would select HDTV 1080 29.97. You want to make sure you have your composition settings set correctly in the very beginning. If you do not, and you go back and change them after you've already animated and created something in your composition, it's almost sometimes impossible to get it to look right working backwards. So always make sure this is set correctly when you start. Okay, so we're in After Effects. Let's talk about using the 3D space. I'm going to create a new, we'll do a text layer so we can actually see this. I'm going to type out some text. Just make it black and white so it's easily readable. I'll make it nice and big. First thing I do when I create text, just out of habit, I always align it dead center using my align tools. And now we have our nice text layer. Our anchor point is automatically at our bottom here, which I think gets changed depending on where you set your paragraph to, but it's on the bottom for now, which is fine. I'm going to bring up my transform properties of this text layer. So these are our standard transform properties, right? Anchor point, position, scale, rotation, opacity. I'm going to turn on motion blur just out of habit for this guy. We're going to turn on 3D. We're going to 3D enable this layer by selecting this checkbox right here. When I do that, it gives me some more options on my transform menu here. It also gives me material options. We'll talk about that down the road. Not as important. There's a few items in there that are pretty cool, but we'll play with this down the road. So it lets me now rotate on a X, Y, and Z axis. Excuse me. It gives me orientation. It gives me a Z scale, which for text doesn't really do much for us, but it also gives us a Z value for position. So Z is going forward to back. X is going left and right. Y is going up and down. So anytime I refer to Z, like a Z axis, that's forward and back. That's Z space. So turning on this 3D layer, we also have anchor point in Z space, by the way. Turning on this 3D layer, we now are essentially moving from, if you can relate it to kind of drawing on a piece of paper, versus now we have a room. You know, we can create art in a room. So we have 3D space. We have depth we can work in, which is awesome. So let's talk about how this 3D, what unlocks. What gets unlocked when we click on this 3D here for text. Now we have Y rotation, which we can make our text do this, which we have never been able to do before, right? So we can do cool spin animations, which is nice and fun, right? Z is kind of the same rotation we had before on that 2D plane, and we have X, so we can flip it around, right? Pretty cool. Orientation, I honestly don't mess a ton with. It looks like it's the same as rotation, but once you get down into a few things, it gets a little wonky. So I kind of stray away. I know there are situations where you use it, I just haven't found them as much. But position value, our new Z axis, we can bring this out in Z space, move it far away, move it close up. So we're not scaling, right? We're moving this in Z space. If I want to get a more accurate representation of what's in Z space, I can select, if you click active camera here, custom view 1, 2, and 3, this kind of gives you a side look of your text layer. So before we're looking from here on, right? Now we're kind of up and looking down at an angle. So when I move this Z space, you can see it's moving it further back in that Z space, right? So we go back to active camera. That's the default. I'm going to reset my value here. Center this up as well. So I've got my text layer. Let's talk about some cool text animations that use the Z-space. Not only text, but I've used these methods for animating, icons and lots of cool stuff. So I'm going to take my anchor point here. Anchor point for 3D animation is very, very important. If my anchor point is in the center here, if I center it up horizontally, vertically, and in Z-space, and I do a Y rotation, it's rotating right in the middle, right? If I change my anchor point to a side, like over to the left here, and I do a Y rotation, now it's animating around this joint, right? Pretty cool. Okay. If I put it on the top here, like it's a little hinge, and do an X rotation, now it's like it's going to flop in like that, right? So let's do a few different ones. Let's do that. Let's start with this kind of, this, I don't know what you call it. It kind of flops in from the top there. So I set my anchor point at the top because this is where I want the hinge to be, essentially. Think of this like a hinge. And I want it to rotate along the x-axis, which is this way, right? I want it to rotate along this line. So I'm going to, I kind of always animate backwards. I will create a keyframe. Actually for this, we know that we want to end up on 0, so that's easy enough. So we can start here. Let's start animated back up till it's pretty much disappearing. So that's at 93, right? We'll create a keyframe here at 93. I don't have a full keyboard, so I don't have page up, page down, but I always use 20 frames forward as a starting point for an animated move. That's just my preference. To move 10 frames forward at a time, you can hit Shift and page down. If you just hit page up, page down, it'll go frame by frame. I don't have that luxury, but so you could hit Shift, page down twice, like hit Shift, hold it, and hit page down twice. That'll move you forward 20 frames. I'm just going to click over here and go to 20. Okay, now it moved my scrub tool up to 20. Oops, that was 20 seconds. Let's go back. Let's try this again. There we go. Okay, so now we're at 20 frames. I'm going to zoom in. So now the next move, I want it to kind of over-rotate. I kind of call this, we're going to kind of get into more advanced keyframing now, but this is called an elastic animation in the sense that you over-animate to your ending point and it kind of swings back and forth between there. It's like a rubber band. It goes past it, swings back, past back, past back. So we're starting back here. It's going to fly in to -50, right? And if you think of this like how this would move using physics, if it's a pendulum, it loses half its energy every time it swings back and forth, right? So if we're at -50 now, the next keyframe we're going to want to create is +25 because we're going back past 0, half as far as this value. So we're going to go ahead maybe 10 frames or so because it doesn't take as long in time to go from way back here to way forward. It takes about half the time. And I'm going to set this to +25. Okay. We'll go down a few more frames. I'm going to set this to -12.5. Again, we're going past and then half the distance as far. So we're at -25 now. We're going to go past that. And we'll go to about 6. Okay, I'll just type in 6. And then we'll go past that, then half, which would be -3. And then to 0. Okay, so here's our keyframes. Start at +93, we're going to 50, but then we're going to +25, we're going to -12, we're going to +6, -3, and then 0. So if I set this and preview it, here's my preview. Looks pretty good. Pretty feels pretty flat though. Let's take these keyframes and we'll do function F9, or you can right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease, and then let's preview that, see what that looks like. Looks good. I like it. By default, I pretty much always, if I know I'm going to be working in 3D space, the second I create a layer, I always make sure when I start my comp, I have motion blur enabled, and then I check motion blur and my 3D space in my layer. It's just by habit. So that's one example of kind of this swing down effect, right? See that a lot in various motion graphics projects on TV and stuff. Very common, very clean, easy to do. Um, this elastic type animation, where we are swinging past our point and then having back to our ending point, which is 0, that is super duper common and very easy to do, and it increases. It makes your animations look so much better. So play around with that with scale. Like you could have something. You could do the exact same thing with scale if you really wanted to, where it scales over and then it kind of bubbles down in an elastic way back to its final state. So we're gonna do this a lot. So please take note of these values and really get used to this timing. I always start with my first swing at 20 frames past. I feel like that's a good speed for things to kind of swing down here. So that's one way to do that. Let's delete that. I'm going to create a new one. Let's do this. Let's do a list of text here. So I'm going to create one text layer. I'm going to make it a little smaller. I'm going to do 2 so it's a little bit longer here. And let's set my, sorry, I have to ignore that. I still have this default set improperly, so it makes any new layer only 2 seconds long instead of the length of the comp. But okay, so I've got my text layer. Let's turn on motion blur. Let's turn on 3D. Let's set my anchor point to this far edge, like way beyond my point even. So I want this to rotate in on the y-axis like this. I want it to fly in like this and do that kind of elastic type, right? So I'll start with my y rotation, bring it back till it's pretty much hidden, right? And create a keyframe. We will go forward to 20 frames, and I'll have this fling back. I'll just use 50 again because that seems to be a nice, easy to remember number. So we're at 50. We'll go negative 25. We will go forward a few frames. We'll go 12.5. Forward a few frames. Negative 6. 3. And 0. You can see these keyframes are getting closer and closer together as time goes on. It's because there's less distance to travel, right? So it doesn't take it as long to get there. And then I'll easy ease these. Function F9, hit function, hold it, and then hit F9. And then I will RAM preview. Remember, we're not RAM previewing using the spacebar. You have to use 0 on your number pad, or if you're on a laptop, Mac laptop, it's you hit Control, hold it, and hit 0 on your numbers. Spacebar, I would never hit spacebar to preview it out like that. It's not usable. So now we have this nice fling out animation, right? What I always try to push is if we have a few of these, I can duplicate this, bring it down. I'll bring both of these up a little bit, duplicate this, bring it down. So if we have 3 layers that we want to do that, you can easily just duplicate, move them. And then I like to offset items. I always say in real life, almost nothing moves at the exact same time. Nothing is in perfect synchronicity, right? It always adds a nice little bit of real world physics that something might be off by a few frames. If you want these to come in together, you might as well offset these by a single frame like that, kind of offset them, and it adds a bit more complexity that I think looks nice, right? Looks cool, looks good. Again, the big difference on that, anchor point. Our anchor point's over here. And rather than animating on the x-axis, we're animating on the y-axis. So I like it. Looks good. Let's delete those. Let's create a new one. Let's do like a slot machine text. Oops. Again, my thing's all funky. So let's say we want this to come in like a slot machine. We're going to, as usual, center these up. I'm going to make it motion blur and 3D. I'm going to take my anchor point, I'm going to put it right in the middle. I want this to come in like at an angle. It's hard to explain until I show you, but kind of like a circular slot machine. You know how they're kind of spinning in a circle? The way we do that, if I go play with my rotation, I can't really do that with this. This is kind of just, it's like rotating on a straight line. It's right. My anchor points are right on top of it. If I set my camera to left, you see this line here as my layer. It's paper thin, so you can't see anything. We're looking at it right from the left on. If I click it, you can see the anchor point in the middle here. If I grab this anchor point and I move it off behind it, and I go back to my active camera, and now if I play with my X rotation, now it's doing this nice kind of circular, rotating around that anchor point in a circular manner, right? So we could do something where we start up here, go forward 20 frames. I'll bring it down to, oops, I started it one, I'm sorry. We're going to delete these really quick. Let's start over. We're going to take this up. There we go, negative 88. Okay, keyframe there. We'll go forward 20 frames. And we'll bring this down. I guess I know I'm going to set it to 50 because that's what I use on pretty much everything for rotation. Go forward a bit. Negative 25. I mean, you should see the pattern here. It's very similar. A little fewer keyframes. We'll go to positive 12. Negative 6. 3. 0. These might be too close, but we'll see. What does that look like? Oh, that looks good. I like that. Okay. Very nice. We got it. So, in class, we talked about putting, I think I put a bar behind it, right? So if I pick a solid, I got my blue solid. I'm going to make it 3D. I'm going to shrink it down to be like just a little, there we go. I'm going to copy these, Command C. I'm going to bring up my blue background. I'm going to paste those onto here, right? So it's going to be doing the exact same thing. But if you notice, my anchor point hasn't moved back yet. It's just, this is what it would look like if my anchor point wasn't moving. Actually, it looks pretty cool. I kind of like, oops, I kind of like it that it does that, to be honest. I'm going to adjust my starting point so it's nice and flat. But that's kind of cool. I didn't do that in class, but I kind of like that. So my anchor point on my blue solid's not going anywhere, but the text is. You can see that we got these weird flashes right here, right? If we go to our custom view, we can kind of see what's happening. They're hitting each other in weird ways. It does that. So if we separate these, that should help. So if I take this, hit P to bring up my position, and I push this back on my Z-axis, I'll bring it back. Let's see what that does. Go back to my active camera. I'm gonna scale this back so it matches. Let's see what that makes a difference. Yeah, that's cool. So we separated it from our background, which is neat. Even do. We didn't talk about lights much, but I think if we go new light, since we're in 3D space now, these lights work a little bit better. If I create a new light here, where does that end up? Where does that go? That goes nowhere. Let me try that again. New light, not point light, but I don't even think we want a spotlight. Oh, you know why? It's this. I'm an idiot. We'll go back to point light. It's because my layer is only this long and I'm over here, so it's not active at that spot. Okay, so now we can see this. If we bring this light right into the middle of it, and we go camera left to see where it's at. So here's our text. Here's our little background thing. Like that. Let me go back to my active camera. So it doesn't look like there's much here, but if I take this light and I adjust its intensity, you'll be able to see what it's doing here. Right? If I turn cast shadows, so it's naturally casting shadows, this light. We'll get more into lights later. This will just be a quick, brief intro. Because this is the first time we have 3D, so lights finally work. If you arrow down, we now have material options for these layers. So if we arrow down to material options, these are kind of the 3D options we get now, these material options. We didn't talk about this class, so it's kind of a little bonus. But if we do accept shadows on, and if we look at this guy, make sure this is accepting shadows. Sorry, just arrow down on material options. Cast shadows off. Off. So we should be getting a shadow behind there. I'm just going to really quick go into my custom view. It might be because it's too far away. There's too much separation. So I'm going to slide this forward more. Slide this back. I'm just kind of squeezing them together so you don't really see a shadow though. It's because this, I think this has to have cast shadows on. Yeah, it does. Okay, so if we turn cast shadows on for that text layer, now you can see the shadows behind it. I'm going to push this guy back a little further now. Oops, not that. I'm going to push you back. Just enough to see shadows behind it, which looks kind of cool. And I think if we do accept lights off, we'll get that full white. We won't get the gradient. So accept shadows on, and I guess we don't really need to accept shadows on that layer. We just need to have this accept shadows. We want to have this cast a shadow, so that looks good. Okay, I think we're good for that. We didn't talk about this in class, so I honestly don't do much with lights, but sometimes it's fun to throw them in there. So if I turn my intensity up here, we can kind of play with this. Let's see. Shadow darkness. So here's our shadows. This is how diffuse they are, right? So this is 0 diffusion. This is the harshest of harsh light. So if I take this layer and I bring it a little bit closer, I'll show you what I'm doing in my custom view. I'm just bringing it in closer. Bring this further out, the wider the cast of the shadow will be. So if I bring that to about there, go back to my active. That way you can see the whole thing. And then I do some diffusion and soften those lights up a little bit. And then I bring down the darkness a hair. That looks pretty cool. I wonder what that looks like now once it animates. It's pretty neat. But you get the idea with this, how this is animating. Let me preview this. Oops. That's the other thing. You start adding lights and stuff, and animations take a lot longer. See how much longer it's taking now to cast those shadows and all that stuff. It's kind of cool, though. It gives it that nice 3D look. It adds just a hair more realism to it. So that's cool. Lights are neat. They're fun to play with in 3D space, too. So I'd recommend playing with them. They're very cool. So that is the anchor point being off of not only center of X and Y, but in Z, pushing that back, and why you would want to do that. So one thing we didn't do in class that I would like to do is kind of talk about building a room. I apologize if you guys hear that beeping. My baby monitor for some reason is freaking out. Let's make a little room. Let's make a solid. We'll make that blue is fine. I don't mind it. Let's make a new blue solid. We'll give it motion blur. We'll make it 3D. We're going to push this back in Z space. This is going to be our back wall. Okay, that's our back wall. Let's duplicate this. I'll rename this background BG. I'm going to rename this left wall. I'm going to hit R, rotate this on the Y by 90 degrees. I'm going to slide this over. I'm going to go to my custom view so I can kind of see exactly what's going on here. These tools up here, this track and drag Z and orbit, this kind of moves you around this viewport, which is kind of nice. Okay, so we got that layer there. I'm going to move my position so it's lined up with the edge there. Okay, I'm going to duplicate you, rename this right wall. I'm going to slide this guy over here. Doesn't have to be exact because we're not going to see any point beyond there when we're on our camera. So if I go back to active camera, you can kind of see we're building these walls. I'll slide this down a little bit. I'll extend these longer too so it goes past our viewport. Okay, pretty cool. I will copy my background again. We'll name this, oops, hit enter or return. We'll name this ceiling. Hope I spelled that right. We want to rotate on the x-axis 90 degrees. Oops, and I'm out of my layer. So we rotate on the x-axis. I push this guy up then, and I scale this guy up. We've got our roof, right? And I will duplicate this, rename it floor, bring it down, and scale it across so it spans the whole thing. So now we filled up our whole screen, but if we add new light, I think if we do ambient light, that might be what we want. I lied, that is not what we want. Let's do new light. We'll do point light again. Hit OK. So it adds this light like right in the middle of where we built our little room here. We can move this around and it affects those shadows in the walls, which is pretty neat, right? You can move this down the hallway. Pretty cool. We can duplicate it, move one closer to us. Okay. If I hit UU, I can change, well, let's go back. We haven't changed it yet. So if we go to light options, we can bring our intensity down a little bit. Right? So now we can really see this 3D wall here, which is very neat. If you want to use these tools to look around in here, they don't really work yet. It gives us this error noise. What you have to do is right click, new camera, hit OK, default's fine, and then you can use these tools. Right? So we can look around and do whatever we want to do. The reason that we didn't really do much of that in class is because next week we're new camera. So you can zoom it, or not zoom, but we can truck in, you know, we do lots of fun stuff. So building these walls and stuff like that, really fun way to do some really cool stuff in After Effects. So very simple, but you can do some really neat things. So I think that's, for the most part, what we talked about in the 3D space. I'm going to create my example of the homework that I submitted, which is an American flag. And then I'm just going to show you the best way that I would animate it. And man, this monitor is super annoying. I apologize. It keeps going in and out of range, so you keep hearing this beeping. All right, it's just going to go off for now. So let's create that. First of all, I'm going to change. I'm going to my preferences. I need to change the default time of a new layer. So ignore this for now. Don't know where this would be. Length of composition, there we go. Okay, so let's make my animation that I did. So first thing I'm going to do, new background. So I'll do new solid, rename it background. I will go to effects and presets. I will throw up a ramp. Yours says gradient ramp, mine just says ramp. While it's selected, I make sure I have this selected, and then you can double click ramp, throws it on there. Select a background color. I will pick a light blue. Okay. I'm going to copy that light blue on my start and my end colors. I'm going to make it a radial. And I'm going to take my second ending color and make it a little bit darker. And then I'm going to line these nodes up. You can also click these triggers, these little crosshair icons. Then you can just click where you want it to be. So I'll click this guy, I'll click down here. Okay, so you've got a nice even ramp, right? Looks good. Okay, so now I want to make my stripes. I'm going to new shape layer. I want to do a rectangle. And then I want to fill that rectangle. So I'm going to do white. I'll do just off of white. I normally don't do fully white or fully black because nothing is fully white or fully black. So, and then we will adjust our size here. Uncheck our constrained proportions. I will just bring this out to the length of the flag that we like. It's actually, I think mine was a little bit smaller. So, okay, that looks like a good stripe to me. Okay, we got our white stripe. Looking good. I will duplicate that, slide it down a little bit, and I need to make this red. I can go up here and change it to red if I want. That's a little shortcut. So I'll do that. Pick a red. A lot of the times to stay in the same color palette, I'll eyedrop to the blue somewhere, and then I'll just adjust this to red. That way I'm kind of in the same pane for like color palette. Okay, good, we got that. Excellent. Now, I'll do white line. I'm just going to rename these. Red line. I'm going to select both. I'm going to duplicate them, so Command D. Bring them down. Okay. And then I'm going to make the smaller versions. So I'll duplicate these top two again. I'll bring them up. And then I'm going to adjust their size. So I'm going to hit UU. UU will bring up everything I've changed on any layer I have. If you double tap UU. If you hit U, it'll just bring up keyframes, which I have done because I have not animated anything yet. And I will change my size. So I want to bring my X value down to about half. So I'm going to go size. I'm just going to go divide by 2. Okay, and I got to do it to this one as well. Divide by 2. And then I'm going to take my background, and I'm done with it, so I'm just going to lock it off so I can actually like click around here and not select it. Grab these, drag them to the right side, line them up. Looks good. I need 2 more of those, so I'll duplicate those, move them up again, and I actually think I only need 1 more. 2 would look kind of funky. Sure, I don't know, whatever. So I know I got 3 on top, 4 on bottom, looks fine. Now I need to make my blue rectangle here. Honestly, rather than starting from scratch, I'm just going to grab one, duplicate it, slide it over, and then I will change my fill. I'm going to pick off my blue palette, and I'm just going to make it darker. Okay, we're good. I'm going to hit UU, because I know I've changed my size. I'll bring that up. I'll stretch it out best I can. I'll kind of line it up here. Going rather fast, but it's just to show you, you know, how quickly you can create these things if you know what you're doing. Everything's lined up pretty well. My blue is a little too dark. I'm going to lighten it up just a bit. Actually, I might lighten my background up a little. I'm going to go back. I'm going to unlock my background, go into it, select a little bit lighter blue here. Just lighten these colors up. There we go. That's better. And now I'll lock it down. Okay, so I got my stripes. I got my blue part of my flag. Now we just need my stars. So I will right click, new, shape. I'll rename it star 1. Oops. I will rename it star 1. I will arrow down. I will add a polystar. I will fill it. And I'll change my color fill to white. And I'll kind of position it up here, and then I'm going to scale this down. So on our polystar path, you can change the radius and stuff, but I'm just going to change the transform property of scale. Scale it down a little bit. Looks good. Okay, I like that. Now we will start to duplicate. So I'll line this up. It's kind of going to be a just, we'll go by look since it doesn't have to be perfect for what we're doing right now. Just going to duplicate, slide it, holding shift of course so it's on this line. We know we're going perfectly right across. Duplicate it again, duplicate it again, duplicate it again. Space these out. Barely enough room for 5 it looks like. Close enough, doesn't have to be perfect. Select all these, duplicate them all, slide them down, duplicate them all, slide them down. Select these to move them. Make sure I deselect my background. And I'm going to use my arrow keys to kind of nudge down a little bit. Okay, good enough. I may want these a tad smaller actually, so I'm going to select, I can click out of these here. I'm going to select all my stars, hit S for scale, maybe bring these to like 35. So it gives me a little more room. Okay, now we're good. Got all our pieces. Now I just need to write United States of America. I'll change my color to like a dark gray. Not quite black, like a charcoal. Scale it down, I'll position it. Okay, awesome. So to this point, if you'll notice, I really haven't made anything 3D yet. Everything's still 2D. But I want to animate this in 3D space, right? So I'm going to take all these layers, kick on my motion blur, kick on my 3D, right? And that just totally moved everything out of the way. Oh, I'm still in custom view. That's why. Oh my god, that scared me. And this happened in class too. They still had custom view selected. If you don't have any 3D layers, your custom view doesn't go anywhere because there's no, there's nothing to show. You only have the one viewport. It's like viewport, just like you're on a sheet of paper. You can't hold it to the side and see it any differently. So I go back to active camera. Whew. Okay, good. We're still where we want to be. I'm going to grab all these. I'm going to slide them down just a bit. Kind of level our space up here. Okay, now let's start animating. What I should have done when I duplicated all these, my anchor point is in the middle of these stars, which is fine. That's where I'm going to want them, because I'm going to want to have them rotate in while they fly in. These, I don't want my center point on the middle of these, so I'm going to have to manually slide these all over, which is kind of annoying, but luckily there's only a few. If we had a bunch more, might be better off just starting over and setting your anchor point correctly. So a mistake I made, it's going to cost me a little bit of time, not much, but keep that in mind that I should have done it before of setting up your stuff first, because I'm going to want these. I'm going to click and drag and select these guys. I'm going to want these to rotate in on a y-axis, so flip from this side over. All right, so let's do that. I will grab them all. Again, I have my background locked off, so I'm not going to select my background when I click and drag all these. I hit R. Looks like red line. This is not selected. Oh, that's my blue one. Blue. I'll just name it blue. Okay. I've got all these selected. I hit R to bring up rotation. I know I'm going to end at 0, so I can start pretty much where I want to start. So my Y is where I'm going to want to start. It looks like they're going to be in different spots. So this top is a good spot, right where they're hidden there. I'll select these guys and bring them over a little bit further, right? Okay, that's a halfway decent spot. They're going to be moving so fast you're not going to be able to tell. So grab these all again. I'll create a keyframe on the Y. I will go forward 20 frames. Oops, 20 frames. And then I will bring them past. Let's go to 40. That looks pretty good. Zoom in here a little bit. Okay. I'll go not quite as far as the distance between these two for my next keyframe, and I'm going to do negative 20. We're going past 0 and halfway the distance where our last keyframe is. So 40 to negative 20. Then we'll go to positive 10. Okay, and we'll go to negative 5. We're kind of having the distances between each keyframe as well until kind of the end. We'll go to 2.5. We'll go to 0. Okay, I will grab all these. Function F9 to easy ease them. And let's watch this. Looks like one's a little bit different. This guy seems to be acting. Oh, because I only easy ease these. That would be why. I need to select all these keyframes. I just drug down. I'll zoom up so you can see them. I need to select all these guys that I missed. Function F9 or right click. Keyframe assistant, easy ease. Bring this back down. Now if I preview, okay, they're all moving together. Like I said earlier, nothing really moves perfectly together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, my white lines and red lines, I'm going to stagger these, okay? So I'm just going to take them, drag them down a few keyframes each, so they're not all starting at the exact same time, right? It's just kind of random. So let's look and see what that did. Okay, looks pretty cool. They look, I don't know, kind of odd, but yeah, that looks fine to me. I like it. So, got those done. Looks good. What I kind of do is I always kind of leave these all at the beginning, animate them all how I want to animate them, and then I space them out and time them out afterwards. So, I know I have my red and white lines done. So, let's focus on the stars. I'll select all my stars. Let's look at my viewport here. I'm going to bring this up, so it might be a little small, but I'm going to hit P because I'm going to want to fly in behind camera. I'll select a keyframe here and another keyframe at 20 seconds. Go back to the beginning here, and I want them to fly out. If you hit Shift and hold it and then drag this, it increases how fast they go as you slide through. So if I just click and hold and I scrub through, it goes really slow. If I Shift click and then drag, they go way faster. You can go way further. So I'm going to go past the camera. I'm going to move them on the x-axis to kind of go right behind the camera here. So kind of line these up as best I can. And then we'll go push them back even further. Find a little hole here where they'll slide between. Okay, good. So now they're all going to come in together. It's so uniform though. What I'm going to do is while they're behind the camera here, I don't know if I can see that if I'm under custom. Yeah, you can. So while they're, oops. Sorry, I'm trying to show you what I'm going to do here without. So my camera is somewhere in between here. I'm just kind of showing you what's going on here. Let me zoom out so you can see a little bit better. My camera is somewhere in between these two objects. Essentially what I want to do is scatter them around so they kind of fly in from different spots. So while I'm at my starting position, I'm just going to kind of adjust my start values on my X and Y positions, right? So I'll just slide these around kind of randomly, nothing too far. Let's see. Right, I'm just kind of scattering them around. You're not going to really exactly see. Honestly, if you wanted to, I could just click, because we can see them over here, we can kind of just place them, scatter them around in a cool way. Alright, so they're scattered. Looks good. So if we go back to our active camera, fit to 100 so I can see them, and I play through that. Oops, looks like we affected the ending position of this guy for some reason. No worries. We'll grab our position and we'll adjust and put him back in here. Try to be as precise as possible. So now they're all kind of coming from their spot. Looks like they could be pushed to the right a little bit better. So I'm going to just grab a handful of these, shift them over further, spread them out even further. No harm in that, right? Oops, I'm just accidentally scaling. So be careful that you're not scaling. I just want to move the position values. Okay, see what that looks like. Go back to my active. I will preview. Now they're like, that's okay. I would like them to be more behind camera, I guess. I'm going to go back even. Go to our starting position. I'm going to bring some of these more in the middle where the camera is. I keep accidentally scaling. It's getting annoying. Okay, let's see what that does. Okay, good enough. They go a little fast, so I'm going to grab them all, hit U to bring up our keyframes. I'll select them all first. I'm going to easy ease them. Function F9. I'm just going to grab the ends here and slide these a little bit further. A little bit more time. Okay, cool. Looks good. Now let's have them rotate while they do it. So one way to add rotation, I'm looking at position. One way to add rotation to what I'm looking at, normally you'd hit R, but if you hit Shift and hit R, it'll add it to it. If I just hit R, it'll take it away. But holding Shift, oops, I just undid what I did. Let's say I had my position values up. Shift R will also bring rotation. So I will create my, we're going to rotate on the Z axis. Create my rotation keyframes. I have everything selected, so it's creating keyframes for every layer. And I will just kind of spin them. We'll just go back 163 degrees or so, and they should be spinning as they come in. Okay. We'll look at this. See how that looks. Okay, looks good. Now we need to space them out. Same thing we did before with the bars. We will just start clicking and dragging, sliding these guys over, spacing them out in time, just by a few keyframes, 1, 2, 3 keyframes at the max. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Pretty cool. Okay, everything's kind of starting and stopping at different spots. Looks good, but it's not far enough apart where it looks awkward. Now we need, this guy's kind of annoying me how it's coming in too early, so I'm going to click on that. Check my starting rotation here and just adjust this. Okay, it's a little bit cleaner there. Now we need to animate this guy. So it's going to be a Y rotation. So if I hit R, do a Y rotation there, go 20 keyframes or so. Actually with here it could take a little bit longer. Create a keyframe there. Let's just have it rotate maybe, let's see what just one rotation look like. We'll start it at -1, we'll end at 0. I will easy ease. Okay. Actually starting at -1, we want it to start, I'm going to go further and have it start when it's nice and like almost gone because it's a sliver there. There we go. Okay, cool. And last but not least, we'll have this flying too, right? So we're going to do a position move, right? And then we'll have it rotate a little bit as well. I'm just going to do rotation on every axis. Let's get crazy. So I hit U to bring up everything I've created keyframes on. So that's all I'm looking at. I will bring we're working on my starting position. We'll bring this back. Bring this down in front of the camera here. What we'll do right in front. So we'll go just above, and then I'm just going to adjust a little bit of rotation. Just create random values and see what that looks like when it comes in. Okay, pretty cool. So it gives it a little bit of, it's almost like that Lost animation. The show. Oh my god, that might be before your time. There's a show on Lost on ABC. It was very good. Okay, I'll easy these, and then let's look at it. Okay, so everything's animating in now, right? Now let's space these out how we want to do it. So forgive the small viewport here, but the first things we want to come in are my red and white lines, right? So these guys are what I want to come in first. So I'll give it a little pad at the beginning where nothing happens, maybe 10 frames. Then I'll slide this over, grab them all, slide them over. So at 10 seconds, that's when these all start to come in. Then I will want my blue guy to start spinning on. Once those settle down, maybe about when they're halfway through their animation, I'll slide this guy over here. Then my blue guy, I'm just going to hide everything else. Just go up. So these start coming in, right? We're looking at these. And then once those start through, that's when our blue one starts, right? So we'll let that rotate a few times. And that's when we want our stars to come in about this point. So I will grab all my stars, slide these guys over, and I'll unhide them so we can actually see them. And I'll start those about there. So while that's rotating, and actually we might be able to start that a little earlier. Maybe I'll start these guys together. Slide these back. See what that looks like. Okay, good. And last but not least, I will, while those are coming on, we'll have United States come on last. So we'll push that back just behind it. So now we can see, we have a clear view, right? Our white lines come on, our white and red lines come on. There's a little bit of a pause when our blue line comes on with all of our stars. And then our last one. So you can see how this animation progresses. I always recommend creating the intro or starting animation, and then rather than moving these keyframes down your line, keep them in the front and then just move your layer around, right? It just makes it so much easier to visualize what's going on in your animation. So let's take a look. Pretty sweet. Awesome. I like it. Looks good. I'm happy. Really, that's the big part of enabling things for 3D. There's a lot of little nuances that'll come along with it. We'll use a lot of different little pieces of it for certain things, but this is the basic part of it. It just unlocks a nice little added layer of complexity for a lot of these animations. I would really like to start seeing you guys, when you have multiple objects that are like multiple uniform objects like stars and stuff, when you're animating that in, to use this sequential style of animation where they're kind of all offset a little bit, and maybe their values aren't the exact same at their starting point, but they're all ending at the same point. I really like the way that looks, and it's a personal preference, but it's something easy that you can do to make it look really good for potential clients and stuff like that, projects that you're working on. So just an easy thing you can do to win some brownie points for whatever you're working on. That covers most of what we played around with for 3D stuff. Let's talk really quick about, let's say I wanted to move all of this, right? I want to slide this over or scale it down. Rather than scaling and moving each layer, because I already have keyframes on all these, right? If I go down here and I grab this and actually I kind of want this to be off to the right. Well, now over time it's like stuff's going to slowly move over because I've already set keyframes. The best way to do it, if I create a new null object, we can parent all these layers of my flag to this null object, and then we just move or size this null object to our preference. So let's say I want to scale this down. It'll scale everything down. If I want to move it over, right, it'll move it over and everything will now get shifted with it. So that's a good way to kind of, once you finish your flag animation, you can kind of compartmentalize it a little bit and use this as your master, like, you can call this a flag controller if you really want to. So if you want to move the whole flag, that's where you do it. All right. If you wanted to get absolutely crazy, you could do something like, let's see what this looks like. I'm going to create a keyframe rotation to just do a full 360 on this thing. And let's see what happens. Now our whole flag's going to rotate. Let's instead of that rotation, I'm going to flick on 3D here. I want to see what a Y rotation would look like. So I'm just doing a full Y rotation. Pretty crazy. That's really strange. So now our entire animation is rotating. It gets pretty nuts pretty quick, but it's kind of fun. I like it. I like it. So yeah, that is kind of the lesson for today. Play around with 3D stuff. If I think of anything that we didn't talk about, I'll do another video and add it to it. But now that I'm looking at this, these are all off a little bit when they start out, which is kind of annoying. But watching it full speed, I don't know if you'd be able to see it. You can see that now that we've adjusted this and scaled it down, our Z position isn't far enough back behind camera. So when they're starting out, they're just popping out right in front like that. So that's something we would have to go back and fix if we wanted to. So that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll talk more about cameras in the following lesson. And I hope you guys have a good week, and we'll see you soon.